I'm going to go ahead and get us started tonight. My name is Tara Hoffman. I'm the co-chair of Chicago Museum Exhibitors Group Steering Committee, and I want to welcome everybody tonight to CMEG for our kickoff meeting of 2021. Our topic tonight is technology transforming the museum experience. Before I hand off to Stacy, who's going to introduce the topic and our speakers, I just wanted to share a little bit about the CMEG organization itself. We were formed in 1991 as a collection of museum exhibit professionals gathering to network and share information and experiences. And now in our 30th year, we are a group of around 500 members from many local institutions and industry vendors. A few years ago, CMEG 2.0 kicked off with a refocused mission, and that is to inspire, refuel, and connect exhibit folks through workshops, lively discussion, exhibit experiences, and decent snacks. So hope everybody brought their snacks this evening. The group meets 4 times a year. Traditionally, we are hosted by a local museum or a cultural institution, although we have been exclusively virtual for almost a year now. We can't wait to gather again in person, which may happen before 2022. So stay tuned to your email, to our website, or our Facebook group to keep abreast of our coming meetings, and do make plans to join us at the next one, either at your laptop or in the real world. So speaking of which, do we have any CMEG first-timers here tonight? If we do, you go ahead and raise your hand or just pop it into the chat. Hoping we do have some newbies tonight, and welcome. Hope you enjoy the evening, and I extend an invitation for you to join the organization. You can do that by joining our mailing list. CMEG members will receive email notices of our upcoming events and occasional news of relevant seminars and job postings. And another benefit of membership is inclusion in and receipt of our membership directory, which is distributed annually. And that's going to be going out to members later this month. I know everyone's excited to dig into the topics, and with good reason, because we've got an outstanding group of speakers lined up, and they're all ready for the starting gun for tonight's fast-paced format. So let me turn things over to our MC, Stacy Kenny, CMEG Communications and Membership Group Lead. Stacy?
All right, thanks, Tara. And thanks everyone for coming tonight. With the return of in-person museum experiences, we thought tonight would be a great time to talk about technology and some of the innovative ways institutions are integrating it into their visitor experiences. So we kept the technology theme really broad by design, but we did ask our presenters to think about 3 questions. What about the technology is appealing? What challenges does it pose? And what is its potential? So the storytelling platform that our presenters are using tonight is PechaKucha. And for those of you who are kind of new to the format, PechaKucha means chit chat. So it's supposed to be very fast-paced style, and our presenters will show 20 slides with 20 seconds of commentary each. So to help set that virtual stage for tonight, try to take a moment to optimize your Zoom settings to full screen mode, and then side-by-side speaker mode. You'll get the most optimal view in that way. And like Tara said, please know that at the end, there'll be time for Q&A. So I hope everyone has their wine and their snacks on hand. And I'll go ahead and introduce our first presenter, who is John Rusick. John is the Senior Vice President of the Chicago History Museum. He leads the Chicago 00 project, which won a Muse Award in 2018 and a Chicago Innovation Award in 2019. Tonight, John is going to be taking us through his work on evaluating the impact of augmented reality and virtual reality. So with that, John, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Stacy. So thank you for inviting me tonight. It's great to talk about. Great subject. This first image was generated by the Chicago 00 project, which is a collection of augmented and virtual reality experiences we've been developing at CHM. But before I talk about that, I do want to talk a little bit about how technology has transformed the museum over the years. But first, I do want to touch on the two of the three key questions. I think these are pretty simple in terms of technology. What is it about technology that makes it appealing, and what is its potential? To me, technology really expands our reach, helps us be more relevant, makes us more accessible to more people, and fosters new thinking both internally and externally. And as part of the demonstration of that, in 2015, I was asked to chair the Digital Future Committee for CHM. In the end, our vision is a commitment to digital approach, experimental, agile, iterative, collaborative, in order to engage people in a meaningful exchange with the museum, the city, and history. Less about projects and more about the way we were going to behave. So at the time the report came out, like all museums, we already had a digital footprint. For example, we had online access to our research collections almost as soon as we had a website. The critical insight here was that our audience is global. People around the world, what we want to have access to what we have and what we produce. Launched in 2005, the Encyclopedia of Chicago was developed as a hardbound book and as an electronic version. At the time, the mantra was that the electronic version could not deviate from the text of the book. Of course, this perspective had the relationship backwards. The electronic version is the one that has the power to remain truly relevant. The blog, like all museums, it's been around for a while now, but during COVID, it became the primary outlet for new digital interpretation. The History at Home series, for example, has been an effective resource for keeping CHM in the public eye, has contributed to our fundraising goals, public engagement efforts, and other general communication needs. Online exhibitions are another aspect of our digital footprint. This area has grown as a result of the CHM initiatives and with collaborations and partnerships. Last spring, when COVID forced us to convert our planned exhibition on women's history for the 100th anniversary of the suffrage vote, we already had a place to put this now digital project. Now the main focus is the 00 project. It's designed as an experimental digital platform to publish a series of site-specific, interactive, immersive, multimedia experiences to share Chicago's stories in a new and unique way. It started with a basic notion. Can we experiment with this new technology? Engage people with history, collections, and the city. So this is an example of one of the early treatments to create new historical visual mashups of both then and now, while helping visitors see the historical media and distinguish it from the city they're familiar with. We knew we needed to provide access to the media to get feedback from users. So how are we going to do that? We invested in branded cardboard viewers to test the immersive media with people. But the reality was we didn't know how to test this media. How do you do that? How do you make sense of the feedback we get? So we struggled a little bit to improve the projects as we went. So this article that came out earlier this year was what inspired this talk. It's based on our effort to build a new approach to evaluating AR and VR experiences because the tools didn't exist widely. The effort was funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities and the research led by Kate Haley Goldman, who wrote the report and agreed to share the findings with the field. So as part of the NEH grant, we tested all of the 00 experiences we had developed. So the Eastland disaster, this is the site of the Eastland disaster. It's an AR experience using over 70 historical images and newsreel films to tell the story of the SS Eastland, a passenger ship that capsized in the Chicago River. This shows how the augmented reality experience works. The user loads the media on their own device and opens it at the location of the historical event. And the experiences and the media and the interpretation are experienced at their own pace. Augmented reality essentially offers us an opportunity for people to be in the same place at two different times. This image gives you a sense of how the images were then arrayed across this physical landscape in Chicago. You wouldn't have seen these things all at once. You would have engaged with them one at a time through your device, through the interactive technology that powers the augmented reality experience. In addition to augmented reality, we evaluated our virtual reality experiences too. This VR experience with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre offers a tour of the actual site to be experienced at the scene of the crime or wherever the user happens to be. We also revisited our VR program about the 1968 Democratic National Convention, which puts users in the park, near the bandshell, the Logan statue, and the convention hotels as if you're there, a witness to history, with a narration offered by historian and author David Farber. The last existing project we had was about the 1933 World's Fair in Chicago, using historical photos taken from the Sky Ride, which was 600 feet off the ground. We had to use drone photography to take our contemporary photographs. This was the first time we actually tried to use augmented reality to get people up off the ground. And so this is our drone team. This picture's taken from a drone. This is the group that both worked on both of the World's Fairs projects. And what we were doing here is getting some of those high-level shots that would become part of the experience and help people sort of be transported up into the air. So museums have lacked the tools, even the vocabulary for measuring immersion. And how and whether those examples, those elements in immersion contribute to learning outcomes. So we interviewed hundreds of people and created an experience evaluation rubric, or what we call an EER, to examine how individuals experience immersion and presence within AR and VR. And that rubric is now available to anyone. And this final slide just shows you some examples of some of the feedback we got from people who participated. All of this is now published and available to anybody who wants to look at it. And I just want to thank you for the time.
Great. Thanks, John. I'd like to introduce next Kyle Mathers. Kyle is the Director of Curatorial Affairs for the museums at Cantigny Park, which includes the Division First Museum. He's got a master's in public history from Loyola University. And tonight, Kyle will be taking us through Digital D-Day, delving into murals at the Division First Museum. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Kyle Mathers.
So the First Division Museum at Cantigny Park is dedicated to telling the story of the U.S. Army's 1st Infantry Division, or the Big Red One. We do this through immersive environmental galleries with large wall murals that follow the division through World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War. Our World War II D-Day Omaha Beach Gallery opens with a short intro video about preparing for the battle. Visitors sit in a mock-up of an LCVP, or Higgins boat, and once the film is over, the screen or ramp at the front of the boat rises and visitors storm out onto the beach. The notional gallery evokes the feeling and visuals of Omaha Beach in the hours and days following the successful landing. Debris and equipment are strewn about, damaged landing craft are stuck on the beach, and there's a half-destroyed German bunker. However, the props are only part of the environment. Wall murals provide a striking backdrop to this chaotic scene. Murals date to 1991, when the museum was originally built. Details were sparse. There were some obstacles and ships, some barrage balloons, but that was it. There weren't any people, even though after the landing, there were hundreds of thousands of soldiers all over the beach coming and going for quite a while. For whatever reason, our other murals have people, but not these two. So these murals were not well researched. The ships portrayed had no provenance. The geography and obstacles on the beach weren't quite right. And overall, the murals were lacking detail and historical grounding. And they're the biggest, most noticeable part of the gallery. So we had to fix this. We hired artist Keith Rocco to significantly touch up and add to our murals over a 2-month period. Keith lived on site at the park and worked 5 to 6 days a week in the gallery. Our curatorial team researched the men, machines, and ships, finding photos to use and examining models to ensure the new murals were historically accurate. Our June 7th mural here portrays the day after the landing, and it's now filled with boats, soldiers, debris, tanks, casualties, and generally conveys the bustle of activities occurring on the beach. These new details enable us to call out specific soldiers and narratives. Through these murals, we can tell stories that were once overlooked or ignored. Our June 6th mural, portraying the morning of the landing, is in a place that was once dead space. It's a bypass path for people who want to skip the intro film and go straight into the gallery. The existing mural was again inaccurate and frankly boring. It was a place people walked through, not a destination. We saw this as an opportunity to tell more important stories, highlight neglected narratives, and utilize precious real estate within the gallery. In addition to the mural updates, we added more props, ambient lighting, spotlights, and handrails so that the space felt purposeful rather than like an afterthought. In the June 6th mural, we have around 15 points of interest that have great storytelling and narrative potential. This space is already tight. We didn't want to crowd it with graphic panels and block views of the mural. The gallery also already has enough text as it is. So we turned to a digital solution. We've successfully used touchscreens in our other gallery, so why not here? Our curatorial team came up with the idea to have an image of the mural on a touchscreen where visitors could select a soldier, boat, or piece of equipment to learn more about it and view relevant photos and videos and other archival material that we have in the collection. So we found out a digital interactive like this already exists. At the 2019 ASLH conference, we spoke with the owner of Night Kitchen Interactive about our idea, and they had completed a very similar project for the New York Historical Society's exhibition, The Vietnam War, 1945 to 1975. So we're excited to hear this. The NYHS has 2 large murals about the Vietnam War that they wanted to interpret without cluttering them with text. Similar to that project, our interactives will allow visitors to take a cursory glance or a deep dive into the subject matter. We're currently working with Night Kitchen on developing 2 digital interactives, one for each mural. Every addition to these murals was based on historical evidence. In some instances, scenes were recreated from historical photos. These murals are packed full of stories and information available to visitors. These interactives will make information available to visitors in a compact and accessible manner. We'll also be able to add Spanish language options as well. So one thing we're highlighting is the importance of medics and aid stations on D-Day, calling out a few specific people, including Charles Norman Shea, a Pembascot tribal elder. We'll also look at Waverly Woodson, an African-American medic whose heroic actions should have merited a Medal of Honor. However, he only received a Bronze Star. Luckily, in September of last year, a bill was introduced in both houses of Congress to award Woodson the Medal of Honor. We're also highlighting his unit, the 320th Barrage Balloon Battalion, the only all African-American unit to land on D-Day. So through the digital interactive, we'll also be able to tell stories that reach beyond D-Day. The soldier facing the visitors and smoking the cigarette is Ernie Pyle, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and war correspondent who's best known for his stories about American soldiers. So everything has provenance in these murals. Every boat depicted in the mural landed on this section of beach called Easy Red, and they each have a story to tell. These 2 digital interactives will enable us to share the significant amount of information presented in the murals with a variety of visitors in a compact, engaging, and accessible manner. And it'll allow for easy and economical updates in the future, such as adding the fact that Woodson's Bronze Star was upgraded to a Medal of Honor whenever that bill is passed. So these interactives will serve both strollers and streakers by offering a tiered presentation of information through a variety of media types. We'll be able to highlight neglected narratives and tell inclusive stories, presenting a more complete history of the Big Red One and better fulfilling our mission and vision statements. So these interactives are scheduled to be installed in August of this year. If things work out, we track the usage and dwell times and visitors like it. We intend to update our Battle of the Bulge gallery, pictured here, with another digital interactive. That's all I got.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Our next presenter is Nancy Harmon, and Nancy is a graduate of UIC with a master's in Museum and Exhibition Studies. She's also the co-founder and chief curatorial officer for Incurate Mobile Technology. And she's presented at several national and international conferences regarding mobile apps in museums. So tonight she's going to take us through using the visitor's small computer, how museum apps are making museums accessible during a pandemic. So with that, I will hand it over to Nancy.
So thank you so much for having me this evening. I'm really excited to chat with everyone. I'm going to talk about exclusively the use of mobile apps in the museum space and what I've learned and what I've been doing over the past almost decade, specifically with what I refer to as people's small computer that they carry around with them. What I have this evening is to talk about several different people that I have been working with, and I can't wait to show you what they have been up to. Oh, it looks like maybe we just lost the second slide. That's no big deal.
Sorry about that, Nancy.
No, that's okay. So the What I wanted to do to start out, though, was to give you a little bit of background about what I've been doing with mobile apps. And the photo that we went to, that will come up in just a second, is actually talking at an AMM conference. And the reason that I'm including these is because I think it's really important to talk about, what do museum folks ask when they come to us at Incurate? What do they want to know about mobile apps, and how do they want to use mobile apps for their visitors? What are their visitors asking for? So we've been chatting with all of the museum folks about how they use mobile apps. And then what you saw in the last slide was a reason that we're interested in talking about mobile apps is because we know that so many people have a smart device. And then we are talking to people about using what they're bringing with them to the museum. This photo that you're looking at is talking about more activity and talking to more museum folks about what they're looking for. And we found out through all of this that they wanted to provide a way to have visitors take tours and to provide additional content and to provide a map for visitors to use. And then last year we throw into the mix talking about COVID, and all of a sudden we have all these new ways to use them. So the first case study that I'm going to talk about is what you see here. This is Brook Green Gardens in South Carolina, and they are a National Historic Landmark, and they've been a client of ours before the pandemic, reached out and said, hey, we're interested in doing some things now that we have to adhere to some specific guidelines. And so this is their app as it was before the pandemic. Visitors can take tours. They've got an interactive map that they can explore on, information about the museum. But because they're a garden, they were able to stay open at a limited capacity, and they wanted to host events. And they wanted to have something that visitors could use during the event without having to come up with all of this new product that they had to pass out and have all of this different interaction. And so they were able to update and change their mobile app, as you're seeing here, specifically for this huge event. They had over 60,000 people, even with the pandemic going on, wearing masks. And rather than people having to pass things out and have contact, they were able to use their phone. This is Terrace Hill in the Iowa Governor's Mansion, and they're a really great case study because they actually had no interaction at all that was available for visitors throughout the pandemic, and they wanted to have some of the content available if people wanted to come and look around outside. So they came up with this really cool way of what you're looking at now, which I absolutely love. This was a staff of 2, and they were able to create this map that you're seeing that was really unconventional, but very cool. You could tap on a map on one of the images that you see that represents a room and open it up and take a look at what's inside the mansion, even though you couldn't go in during the pandemic. Next, we have the Center for Birds of Prey, and I'm now completely obsessed with owls. They are also in South Carolina, and they had the challenge of not being able to provide tours during the pandemic. So again, they were outside, they could stay open, but they wanted something that they could still provide some sort of context for visitor and interpretation. And so they were able to work with us and create their app. So here you're seeing their map on their app. So visitors download this app to their own device, and they're able to take self-guided tours as they go throughout the grounds at the Center for Birds of Prey. So they can tap on a specific point of interest from a specific tour, and then it's going to open up information like this that you're seeing now, where they can explore images and they can have some interpretation about these very cool animals that they're seeing. Again, they didn't have any kind of interpretation at all. So this is where a mobile app can come in really great if you have very limited resources in somewhere, like you're working with animals and you don't have a lot of text. Bringing it back to Chicago, someone I'm super proud and excited to be working with is the Richard H. Driehaus Museum. They came with a question that I heard a lot over the pandemic, is that people did not want to continue to hand out traditional audio guides to pass between other people. And they had this audio and they had this content and they had all of this other information to put in. So not only were we able to help them put in their audio that they already have, but as you can see here, visitors were able to purchase tickets. They were able to get information about hours and admission that was constantly changing for all of the museums here in the city, as I'm sure you all know. And then we were able to also provide their audio tour. So here's an example of what one of their audio tour pages looks like. Visitors can just tap and listen on that bottom left-hand play button, and they're able to get audio and information all in one place on their own device that they carry around with them every day. So one of the things that I'm excited about with mobile apps is a little bit more of statistics, and we keep seeing them going up. Over 90% of people in the United States have a smartphone, and we know that people are making apps, they're creating apps. And how do we make it more accessible for museums to use? One of the challenges in this particular space is to make sure that as this technology becomes more accessible, it becomes more affordable for museums of all sizes to use. And another thing that I'm really excited about seeing, actually piggybacking off of John's presentation, is thinking about augmented reality in a native mobile app. I think will be something that we see in the near future that I am also really excited about. So thank you so much. Apologies for the rough start, but hopefully that was some helpful info.
Great. Thank you so much, Nancy. I want to introduce our next speaker, Thone Lorenz. Thone is the co-owner of LB Creative Partners, and for the past 15 years, he's produced interactive installations using a really wide range of technologies. His clients include museums and then a variety of other public environments. And tonight he'll be taking us through technology plus functionality equals innovation. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Fong.
So today I'm going to talk about technology in a somewhat general sense, but using specific examples to do so. In our industry, I think one of the constants is that we're going to be using technology that's always changing. And I'm lucky enough to work with a lot of different media types, whether it's AR or VR or IR or LiDAR or even acronyms that don't rhyme. And working with a lot of different media, you get to see patterns. And over the years, I've found my favorite technologies for telling stories or for educating audiences are the ones that function. The most innovative technologies, or the ones that get me excited, are the ones that we can use confidently and work perfectly all the time. And then also, God forbid, they're easy to maintain, which I think is also very important. And we've all been to institutions where we've seen digital interactives that were broken or had poor user experience for one reason or another. And that's why today I want to take a look at a seemingly simple interactive, and that guy's having a bad time. I want to take a look at a seemingly interactive installation and talk about just a few of the aspects that make it work and get me excited from a technological standpoint. So the project I'm going to be talking about is at the Adler Planetarium's Chicago Night Sky exhibit. This project in particular was an Angle Park project. I worked on it. That's why I know all the details. And I figured since CMEG was planning on having an event there before COVID, it'd be fitting to discuss it and talk a little bit about it. So as our slides catch up, you can kind of see it in the distance, and we'll get to a lot of images of it. But guests use a touch screen to create their own constellation. They use a touch screen, and once they're done, the constellation shoots off the touch screen. There we go. We can see it now. It shoots off the touch screen onto the projection for everybody to see it. And users can send themselves the constellation via text message or email. They can take a selfie in front of the projection when it slides up there. And it's large, it's novel. It makes sense in the context of the gallery. I'm giving like a really general, simplified view, but we're talking a lot about constellations in the exhibit. And there's a few reasons why it's a good experience, at least from a technology standpoint. It uses both mature technology and new technology. Specifically about the hardware, it uses fast PCs, right? We're always working with computers. And in this particular installation, obviously PCs have been around forever, but it's using newer ones. They have cutting edge graphics cards. They have high quality processors and high quality hard drives. And that doesn't necessarily mean expensive, but it means new and the correct tool for the correct job. We've all seen, installations that were kind of hamstrung by, somebody trying to save $300 at the last minute. But in this case, it didn't happen. Additionally, the touch screen. Touch screens are another technology that have been around for a very long time. I have no idea how long. But this particular one is, again, high quality, but it's the newer iterations of those old technologies, right? And we'll get more into that later, but it's accurate, it's peppy, it's fast. Even sending the SMS, the text messages and the emails, we use a new high quality service to do that. And moving the constellation between the touchscreen and the projector, those are two different computers. But in the animations, hopefully you'll see them. It's seamless. It happens all at once, and that's using some old technologies. But because of other new technologies, we can make these old technologies do things they couldn't do before. Talking about the touch screen again, really quick. One of the most important things I think when using any kind of user interface is responsiveness. We want, when the user touches, there to be a response immediately. That's, part of a good user experience we could say is response time plus UI, right, equals good user experiences. We never want users to think about the technology itself, right? We want the technology to be transparent. We never want to say, people to say, hey, is that a button? I just tapped it. Nothing happened. Oh, something, maybe something happened later. Did they do that? Did they trigger it? We never want there to be unexpected results. Also with that particular model of touchscreen, if somebody leans on it, it's going to keep working for the primary user. It's another important factor you want to consider, especially in a public space. Similarly, it's important to know when and how to use software. Again, in this case with the software, I'm going to say it again, we're using the latest iterations of mature platforms. Oh, and I'm going to miss out talking about a little bit of the software. But with any technology that we're using, we're gonna face a lot of the same problems. And I think if we're going to be innovative.
Vaughn, did we cut you off?
Oh, I'm not sure. There was a pause there for a second, and my screen said I had an unstable internet connection. Sorry about that.
Well, is there anything you wanted to close with? I don't know if that was the end of your presentation or if it cut you off.
To reiterate, wherever we're using technology, no matter what it is, to just to be thoughtful using it, making sure that we're always creating a good user experience from the ground up. The technology makes sense for the end user when they're using it, almost essentially trying to make the technology itself transparent so our stories come through.
Great. Thank you so much, Thon. Our next presenter is Brandy Olson, and Brandy's a 20-year veteran of the design industry. She cut her chops working in all aspects of media production at Leviathan and is now the operation manager at Lucy Creative. Tonight, Brandy's going to be taking us through the exhibit Numbers in Nature, merging design, education, and technology for new learners. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brandy.
All right, thank you so much, Stacy, and everyone at CMAG and all the presenters before me. Awesome, thank you. I'm really thrilled to be here. I am the operations manager at Lucy Creative, and tonight I wanted to bring not only my background as a professional, but my perspective as a parent. I'm gonna first start with a little bit about me. I grew up in rural Iowa, and there I was the youngest with two way older brothers. I was usually left to myself. There weren't a lot of other kids, no public parks, just me. I was free to roam and explore nature, cornfields, wooded areas, and creeks, or crick, as we say in Iowa. It was just me and my imagination. So that curious and creative mindset first led me to study fine art at Ringling and then to Loyola for my bachelor's in art. And after finally admitting to myself that I had a much stronger acumen for business than painting, I recently wrapped up with my formal education at Colorado State. Alongside that, I have had the privilege of working at two really phenomenal design studios, and it's at both Leviathan and Lucy that I really developed my deep passion for how things could be. Both companies craft experiences from the ground up, and none of the projects that I worked on existed before we made them, and that makes everything feel possible. So I'm going to admit, this is totally out of character for me to get in front of people and talk. I really prefer to be behind the scenes. It's a whole introvert thing. But I was really thrilled and terrified when my teammate Isabel asked me to do this. And I'm here because I see so much opportunity for museums right now, and I'm super passionate about getting education to the next level. And this is why. This is my daughter, and this is what second grade looks like right now. And I really don't think it's a bad thing. I just got a bird's eye view into what and how kids learn. This perspective, coupled with a career in working in interactive experiences, this is where it really all comes together. And this is where I see so much potential, because if curated properly, my second grader has the ability to experience things that were only available to a select few just a few years ago. And I'm going to start by referencing, I'm going to get to a project, I promise. I'm going to reference the Numbers in Nature exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry. And I'm doing this because it's one of the first projects that was a collaboration between my previous company and my new one. I was at Leviathan, a digital interactive agency at the time. And over 2 years, I watched the project unfold from concept through execution. It is a visual deep dive that's showing all numerical it's showing that numerical patterns are all around us. When guests enter, they're surrounded by a large format film that introduces the universality of mathematical patterns like fractals and spirals and the golden ratio and Ferroni patterns like you see here. This illustrates how patterns exist in nature, design, and architecture. The Vitruvian Man is an LED display wall where guests learn about proportions of the human body through camera and motion tracking. Again, I'm business side, I'm not engineering, so I'm not going to attempt to talk through the back-end programming of this. I just really wanted to share it as an example of how great exhibits can evolve to reach more people. And this is about great content. This is another example. This is an interactive table where visitors touch the screen. Maybe an opportunity for a new touch gesture thing in the future. But anyways, this action triggers the underlying geometry that demonstrates the mathematical patterns in leaves, butterflies, snowflakes, and seashells. You get the idea. Anyways, I know people get frustrated with math. They see numbers and they freak out. I get it. This exhibit is where math becomes real on multiple levels by adding dimension. The gamification puts kids in control, and it's familiar. In games like Roblox and Minecraft, kids are now making their own experiences they play, and it's creating this rich environment. So again, I'll get to the point here. Where I really want to go with this is the opportunity. And how do we share this exhibit? MSI took the first step in 2017 when they took this on the road. They managed to engineer a way to get this exhibit into 6 semi-trucks and send it out across the United States, basically replicating it over and over again. Yay, like the mirror maze. The whole idea here is concepts are sticky because they're interactive. That's what museums do, and that's what they do very, very well. Now that devices and internet connections are becoming more available to more people in our city around the globe, we can challenge accessibility, geographic, and economic barriers. Numbers in Nature is a terrific example. It's a great exhibit. It should be in the hands of more teachers, parents, and students. Getting it on the road was a really great step, and now what? I used a VR headset here to illustrate my point, but it doesn't have to be a VR headset. The Smithsonian History Explorer is a wormhole of interactive content. It's super fun and engaging. Met Kids holds Animation Lab, where 8 and 10-year-olds make and showcase their work digitally in video format. The opportunities are increasing, and they're increasing fast. The kids they're not just consumers of content, they're engaging, and they want to help to curate their own education. So when we embrace games and interactive experiences as an essential part of learning, we offer that additional dimension. I don't want to go back to the way things were. I really want to take this further. I want to be able to dive into the root of a plant and see how osmosis works. I don't want to just read about it. I don't want to just watch a video. I want to play and I want to interact and I want to explore. I want to touch, I want to smell. And maybe I want to do that from my bedroom. So here's what I imagine in the future. Could you imagine going to class, putting on your own headset and experiencing the birth of a bee? It's pretty amazing and it's entirely possible. And through technology, a kid growing up in the city, maybe in the middle of a pandemic, is able to explore science, math, and design in more immersive ways. And it's almost as cool as growing up on a farm. Now, here's the mom in me. A couple months ago, we were at the Mississippi Aquarium in person. And today I was watching an otter cam in Seattle from my home in Chicago. The more we embrace digital variations of live experiences, the more we support accessibility and equity for all.
Great. Thank you so much, Brandy.
Thanks.
So last but not least, I want to introduce Joe Burke. Joe is a designer and educator who's passionate about bringing an emotionally intelligent eye to the design process. His practice focuses on how design might empower people to express themselves and understand each other. So tonight, Joe's going to take us through Drum Circle, an inspiration for environments that can connect and heal. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joe.
Thanks so much, Stacy. So, hi, I'm Joe. First, I wanted to ask, how are you guys? Like, not in the kind of, oh, fine, how are you way, but I mean it because it's been tough out there. Like, we've gone through a lot this past year and we're still going through a lot. And people have been kind of coping with it in all kinds of different ways, baking, binge watching shows, reading. This is kind of how I've been dealing with it personally. I've gone to music my whole life for a source of understanding or to feel connected to something, especially in times when it's been hard to connect with others. Moments where I've really resonated music have been some of the most like life-affirming moments in my life. Music therapists actually really agree with me here, although they kind of thought of that first before I did. But they realized that people can be healed and affirmed through music. And during my graduate studies, I became fascinated at this intersection between creativity and health. Music therapists have found that music making has benefited populations from toddlers to memory care. And one of the most beneficial modalities of this kind of therapy is collaborative music making. And that's what really kind of like took me into how can I improve this with the technology that I know about. There are some barriers going into this though, like being music is hard to learn, and getting a bunch of people together to play music at the same time is even more difficult. So how do we get people together that may have different levels of experience and able to create together? And one thing I've noticed recently is that we seem to be in kind of a society where, yes, we are very connected literally, but we all seem to be kind of in our own interactions. We are interacting with our own little rectangle that is telling us all we need to know, and we are able to kind of curate our entire life through that. But I want to take that kind of inward perspective and push it outward towards collaboration with others. And how can we use technology to actually connect or heal some of the rifts that have been kind of strewn throughout our society. But with collaborative music making, in terms of the technology, there are a lot of difficulties here. That, especially digital music is very hard to create. There's lots of buttons and knobs and stuff like that. And this is a simple synthesizer and I barely know how to use it. Overall, it's difficult to make. And it's frankly hard to make it good. And you could probably hear this image. So for that, I'm sorry. But if we want to create persistent interactive music in an environment, we're going to need to make sure it doesn't get repetitive and grating. This is very difficult. And so that's what kind of took me to my thesis project, which was generating this thing called Drum, which is a series of interconnected Bluetooth drum pads that interface with an app on the music therapist's iPad, which allows both the participants to have more creative agency and allows the therapist to kind of reduce their cognitive load in maintaining the musical environment. And by interacting with an automated instrument rack in Ableton, we can kind of strip away some of the complications of creating digital music and pare things down to the bare essentials. And through automation, this can happen. And through this new technology, it can more people can be enabled to use it. So, and there have been even more developments, such as Tyler Etter's Arcologies environment, which actually creates generative music from random seeds that is always ensured to kind of sound good, but will consistently evolve over time based on very few input parameters. So now, remember when we used to be like in other places and with other people? I don't really remember. Maybe you guys do. But one thing that this pandemic has taught us is that we really kind of undervalued being near other people. And what if music technology and this can, help us appreciate just being around other people? So what if a hallway in a gallery could be transformed into a musical staff, and every person on that is an individual note, obviously within a nice scale, so it sounds good. But and everyone, as they move through that piece of music continues to evolve. Or even if just your presence in a lobby or a gallery or something could influence the development of, a generative image along with ambient music, and like the space can acknowledge the fact that you are there and appreciate the fact that you are there. I also want to, taking things further from these passive experiences, I want to take a hint from my friends Ali, Fife, and Q-Tip here, and recognize how much fun and kind of affording connections making music together can be. So I want to imagine these kinds of environments as well. So what if there was a, some type of pond or pool or interactive kind of repository for where people can bring their voices or bring sounds they found out in the world and have that grow as its own work of art that everyone can contribute to. Or what if we could teach about how music is generated and how it is a coming together of multiple elements in an installation that can only be operated by multiple people. There are ways to kind of not only force this connection, but have people appreciate this connection through the generation of the music. And so seeing the potential that's allowed by this music technology for stripping away some of the more arduous tasks of creating the music, there's a lot of potential for music to heal and connect with people. So I say, let's make music. And I say, that we should do it together. Totally flubbed that last line, but let's make music together. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Joe. And thanks to all of our presenters tonight for sharing and spending their time and expertise with us. Want to try to open it up to some questions. And a lot of questions have been popping up throughout the presentations, which is great. So I'm going to try to kind of direct them to our presenters. And I guess I'll start with, let's see, more just popped up. There were some questions for Brandy. You mentioned that there were 2 exhibits, a Smithsonian and another one. Are those online?
Yes, definitely. It's a Smithsonian History Explorer, and the other one is Met Kids, Metropolitan Museum of Art.
And then there's also a question for you in how do immersive experiences like the Van Gogh exhibition fit into what you were talking about?
I didn't work on the Van Gogh exhibition. Again, I'm business side, and I was with that was a Lucy and Leviathan project, but I wasn't involved with it, so I can't really speak to it. But I know there might be others here who could.
Okay. And Linda asked that question. So Linda, if you have a more specific follow-up to that Brandy can answer, maybe you want to put that in the chat as well. Just going down the line. see what else we've got. There was a question for Thon. This is from Isabel. She's saying, we're all thinking about COVID. What do you think is going to happen with touch screens like the one in the exhibit?
Yeah, that's a good question. It might be the case that we see less of them. I guess the nice thing about all these devices is we could make a constellation shoot off of your phone onto a projection too, if need be. But to answer it seriously, when COVID first popped off, and nobody knew what the ramifications would be, I remember I have two friends that live in South Korea, and I was talking to them. And I asked them, I was like, hey, this isn't your first pandemic. What are your thoughts on touchscreens? And it was pretty funny. Their response was, hey, why don't you clean them sometimes? So I think we'll probably see a lot more cleaning of all public surfaces. Luckily, I think with COVID in particular, we kind of lucked out and found out it's not as communicable as we thought it was at first from surfaces. And when it is, I think it's metallic surfaces that tend to be where it can live the longest. But either way, I think we're all more conscious of it. And I think we'll see a lot more cleaning. I've seen new mounts for screens that have come out that actually have a wipe dispenser or a hand sanitizer dispenser built into the station. You might see, again, like in South Korea, my friends mentioned that some people bring styluses around with them so they can keep using touch screens. So I'm not totally sure. I'm sure we'll still have touch screens and they'll be around, but maybe we'll leverage more personal devices. Maybe we'll be more mindful of the public ones. Hopefully that was answered something. Yeah.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of questions for Nancy. Nancy, what percentage of visitors download apps across all of the clients you work with?
Yeah, that's always the question, right? Like, who are they using them? And I'm super excited to say yes, and yes, even more so since the pandemic. So I have a specific client that I did a case study with, and they closed completely in March. They've been a client of ours, been working with them for years, and they had over a 200% increase in their app download rate. And then as far as the actual download rate as compared to visitors, right? It depends on how many visitors you have. And we work with all different kinds of institutions. But all of the app download rates for the past year have been going up, even if it's 10 or 12%, which we have seen for sure. Glen Sheen being at 200 was the highest, but over 100% increase in half of our clients have